Hello, welcome back. It's been a while, but today we are going to start a new series of videos. My name is Daniel Okloen and I'm going to talk about some of the Sony new cameras and the features that we can use. Today is something special because I'm kind of looking at some of the features of my camera, in this case a Sony A1, but it's also true for some other cameras, and we're going to talk about customizable dials. I've never used it before, but I was playing around and trying to figure out what kind of videos I can make, which will be useful for people. No, not reviews and not comparisons or predictions, but just features that I've figured out or friends of mine figured out that can be useful. So maybe you've seen this one before, maybe you have not, but I think it's kind of interesting to look at cameras and see if we can use them in different ways or we can adapt our changes. And in a way this is kind of interesting because the way that this started is I was always using back button focus. So I have this big cup on here, so sorry for that. But that basically means I'm using this button to focus. And about a year ago somebody convinced me to stop doing that, to not do back button focusing, because with newer cameras it's not really needed anymore. And it took me a few months, but after these few months I sort of stopped using this button. So I also took it off because otherwise you would be confusing yourself. So after a few months I kind of didn't have the muscle memory to do that anymore. So I can now start reusing this button. So I was figuring what can I do with this button, and I looked at customizable dials. And could I do something interesting with that? So let me first show you what I came up with and then see if it makes sense for you. And if you're not using back button focus, this might be something that's interesting to you. So let's look at this view so that we can see both the top and the front view of the camera. And so what I want to do is basically be able to quickly change between focus modes. And of course I have a button for that. I can press the button and then slowly change it to another mode, but it takes a few seconds. So I was wondering, what can I use this button for? And what I came up with is that there is a way to make this dial, which normally is for me either my shutter speed, so to the front dial, is either my shutter speed or my aperture. So I've now in aperture mode, so you can see that if I go big on this one, that if I turn this front dial, which you can see the top finger just doing, it changes my aperture, which makes perfect sense, right? And if I'm in shutter mode, then of course it will go to the shutter mode, the shutter speed. So what I wanted to do is to see, can I use my front dial, so basically this dial, can I use that to switch to another focus mode? And you can actually do that. So let me first show you and then explain what's happening. So the first thing that which I like is that if I press it, nothing happens, which makes perfect sense. So if I take a picture, it's of course fine, but if I press it and I take a picture, it's still fine. So that's good because it does not throw off my natural habit of still sometimes pressing the button for my back button focus days. So that's a really cool feature, that it does nothing if you don't turn the dial. But if you turn the dial, so if I press it, of course normally if I move it, it will do aperture in this case, but if I press it, it's reprogramming these dials. And you can see that because on the display you see that if I press it, what the dial then does. So in this case it tells me, hey, this dial is doing nothing, but the other dial is now being programmed as your AF mode. So what's nice about it, if I press it, that I can use the front dial to change the mode that I'm in directly. So let me show you. So if I take a picture, right, normally a picture, I'm in this case an expandable spot mode, but if I turn it, you can see, also see it here on the screen, that I'm changing mode. So I'm now in wide mode, for example, and I can take a picture. Now of course you can't see this really happening at the moment because I don't have it up to my eye, so it's a little bit of a weird interaction. But if you're using it, it gives you a very powerful sort of control over the camera. Because what you can do if you have it up to your eyes is basically press the button, quickly go to a different mode, take a picture and move it back. So for example, I found out that if I press it and I go 3 clicks to the left, that I'm in a small focus mode. So why is this interesting? Well, that means that if for some reason, if my AF doesn't want to pick up the object that I want, that I can quite quickly, by pressing the button, going 3 to the left, I now know that I'm in a small spot focus. And I can just pick the subject that I want and move it back. And this is very handy because, let me take it up to my face. If I do it like this, you can sort of imagine, that by pressing the button and just quickly changing the dial, it's extremely quick to change the different modes. I hope this makes sense, but you should try it because it's a very interesting interaction. So let me put the 2 slides back on. Make myself a little bit, smaller. So here we go. So I think that's a very interesting sort of feature to use. Why did I become big? Because I go to here. Okay. So of course, first video, it will be messy as always. We don't want to change some things, and one of the things I don't want to change is how messy I am. So the nice thing about programming this button is you already notice that it does not really change the interaction normally. Only if I combine it with the front dial, it basically gives me a new feature. It also works the other way around. So if I let's zoom in again. So if we go to this, so if I zoom in again, then you can see that if I press it and I change the dial, it changes. But even during the change, so even if I'm still holding the button, I can already press the shutter. Right? So it does not stop any interaction. It doesn't pop up a menu. It doesn't do basically anything. And in fact, it shows you at the bottom over here which mode we are actually in, which is kind of nice. So if you let the camera focus, you can actually see it change over there. That's also quite cool. So in the front here, you can see it change. So if I turn it there, you can see what mode we are in, and you can see what mode we are going. I hope that makes sense. But the nice thing is that even if you have it pressed, you can still use the full camera and take the picture in the new mode that you already have selected. So you could actually, let's assume we are in this mode, and I want to be in a different mode, and know there's 2 clicks to the left. Go there, take a picture, move it back, and done. Of course, if I leave it in that mode, it stays in that mode. That makes perfect sense. But please try it, because it's an interesting sort of way of quickly going into another mode without first pressing a button, go to the other mode and select it again. It also is not like a button that you can press to go to that mode. Of course, you can also do that with custom button, but you can only select one focus mode. And in this case, you can select multiple, or you can select the one that you want, which is kind of nice. What's the pity is that now that I put the screen back, it's more difficult to see. Again, first video in a long time, so it'll take some getting used to it again. So how do I set this up? So basically, you're combining 2 features. You're combining reprogramming a button, so I'll show you that. And under that button, I've programmed a programmable dial. So let's first look at the button. So if you go to the menu system, and you have in your last panel, which is the brownish yellow one, you have custom settings. You can do this for video and for audio. Of course, for video and for pictures. For pictures, you would of course use something like the AF mode. Maybe for audio, you'll put something else on the dial. For example, that you can set the volume. You can imagine that you press the button, that you can quickly set the volume over here and let it go again. That's what I put on the video one. So you can see you can go to custom, and then of course I want to have the front of the camera, which is this one, and you can see that I can say on this mode. So basically it's my AF on button, and I put it on my dial number 2 during hold. So only when I press it, it does that. You can also do toggle, which made no sense in this case, but only if I press it down, it will override the front dial to do this function. So what happens if I press it? It will go to my dial setting number 2. So let's go for that and see what my dial settings is. It's in the same menu, but then a little bit lower. You can see one more back. Oh, of course. Where did it go? Where did it go? Okay, sorry. One position back. You can see again in the menu. But then the third option, operation customization, and then you get dial customization. And here you can set up the different dials. So for example, you can say my dial settings over here, and then here you have your 3 settings. And you can see that I've put setting number 2. I picked that one. And you can set all the 3 dials. Now I did not use the front dial. And also didn't use the back dial because when you're pressing it, it does not make sense to be able to set this dial, right? Maybe there's another use case, but in this case, if I press this button, only setting the front dial actually makes sense. So you can see that if I use the front dial, I will automatically say in the in focus area that I can pick. So that's indeed what happened. So I've set it here. I could also set it to something else, but well, let me show you if I put it. We were talking about volume, right? So let's put it on audio volume. And now if I press it, you can see that it below shows me, oh sorry, the microphone. You see it? Little microphone over there. I didn't want to do that, so I'll put it back to the same setting. So I'll put it back into, you can see you can set it to all kinds of stuff. Some of them don't make sense because it already is, for example, on aperture mode. But if I go to the in focus area, which is the one I like, and then select it, you can see that if I press it now, you can see, oops, you can see that indeed it goes to focus mode the moment that I press it. So again, I think this is a very useful feature. So again, let's repeat, the idea is that the camera will just behave as normally, and if you have the time, you can of course go into a different way to select your focus mode. But when you're shooting and you press this, you have a quick way by just doing 1-2 clicks, click, put it back, and click again. Very direct, very handy to be able, especially to go from things like wide to spot, or from expandable spot to wide. A quick way to be able to do it, because you can almost do it in one hand gesture, bam, and then 2 clicks, and you're in the correct mode. I find it quite a useful feature, so and I didn't use it before, so maybe this is helpful for you. I hope so. Yeah, thank you for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye bye.